Well, we're back with the Continuous Compliance Podcast. And today, I thought we could talk a little bit about what it's like to be in an active ransomware or cyber attack as part of a company. So I thought we could talk about a hospital, some kind of medical practice. I was just at Boston Children's Hospital with my daughter. She's fine, but we had an appointment. And, you know, as I was checking in and waiting to see, you know, first you see the nurse who takes your vitals, and then you wait and you see somebody else who does an intake, and then you see a doctor. If at any moment a ransomware attack had hit that hospital or cyber attack and everything stopped.
You hope the critical life-saving machines have battery backups. You hope that they're connected. You hope that they're not IT connected, but connected and still functioning. But one of the things that we've done is we've tried to make hospitals as smart as possible because you can't get enough nurses. Nurses are critical to keeping people alive in a hospital. And what nurses have to do is make sure that you're moving, make sure that you're getting your medication, make sure that you're doing the things that you need to, that your vitals read well. Well, that works great when you can centralize all of that and go, you know, room 1's vitals, room 2's vitals, room 3's vitals. Well, all that's now down. So now they have to go and touch again. Now they have to go and visit each room far more often than they even have people for. Right? God forbid you have medication. All the medication dispensers are electronic or digital. So now you don't know who's supposed to get what medication, how frequently, when the last time they got their dosage, when the next time they're supposed to get their dosage, unless you can memorize the pills, right?
Right.
And let's assume that you have a way to get into the machine to begin with, right? And for all I know, you open the machine door and there's a barcode on it. It doesn't even say the medication. Because we didn't design these systems with ransomware in mind. They just weren't designed that way. It'd be kind of silly to design them that way. At the same time, resilience is always good, right? And we really should be thinking about, you know, 2 is 1, 1 is none in doing these things. But there's a million different pieces of a hospital. It's what makes it so interesting when it comes to ransomware. Think about someone who's in surgery. A ransomware attack happens, just like that, middle of surgery. Do they have a DNR?
Oh, wow.
Right? Because now you're in a liability issue. If they have a DNR and you don't know that they had a DNR and you continue to save their life and bring them back.
Was it justifiable that the way that you relied on receiving that information wasn't available to you? And to be more specific, let's say that a cyber attack is launched at several major hospitals across cities in the United States, all at once. Okay? So we know a little bit about what the impact is to us, to families, to regular people. But let's talk for a minute as if you were the CISO of one of those hospitals, CIO. Let's pull back the curtain. What happens next?
Panic. Panic happens next, right? Because everyone's going to call you immediately, all the time. It's not going to slow down. It's not going to stop. It never comes as anything but a surprise. You may get a little bit of warning, like, okay, we've seen a little bit of activity. We think it might be malicious. We started looking at it. The second you look at it, it's now a race between you and the attacker.
Who do you call first? Now you.
Well, I call my chief risk officer. I call them immediately. I'm required to, right? I call the chief risk officer. I say, this is the signs of what we're seeing. This is the specific action that we are taking. It's now up to them to start the next level of alerting, right? The second call from me would probably be to whoever I directly report to. Hopefully I report to the CEO, and I'll call the CEO next. But if not, then I'll call whoever I report to, which should not be the chief risk officer. And I start those notifications, and then I probably contact my incident response company. And this all happens within the space of a minute. I don't spend any time on details because I have too many calls to make, right? So I call the chief risk officer and I go, we're in the middle of a breach. I don't have details. Immediately start the war room in the bat phone. I then call my CEO and I say, hey, we're in the middle of a breach. I don't have any details. I'll call you back immediately. Expect phone calls. This is happening. Hang up the phone. And then I immediately call my IR team.
But Active Directory is down. How are you making these communications?
I'm using my cell phone.
Got it.
I keep all of it in my cell phone. It's pointless to try to do it any other way. And I keep it in my cell phone, not my company's controlled cell phone in case Intune gets scrambled or something happens there.
Okay.
Right, I don't want to be locked out.
So you notify head of risk, you notify the CEO, and you assemble your incident response team. This all happens within the first couple of minutes of realizing we have an emergency. 60 minutes later, what does your world look like?
It is both more chaotic and less chaotic at the same time, because now we've established the war room. we're all sitting in one or more conference rooms, depending on how many locations and how many sites we have and where everybody's kind of geolocated. I am doing 15-minute updates back to my, well, in this case, Chief Medical Officer and the board, as well as my CEO. It's kind of an open line, but I am doing, I'll talk for 3 or 4 minutes of 15, and then I mute it so that I can then turn and focus on my team and give my team whatever support they have, while I'm also coordinating between the insurance company, my incident response company, which I was smart enough to to find our policy, find out who's authorized, and have a contract for that incident response team already in place. We're not doing contract negotiation. We're not figuring out how much that costs. If you wait, if anyone listening to this podcast goes, ooh, I haven't done that, and goes, I'll get to it eventually, it's going to be too late. Because ransomware is not an all or nothing thing. So what we're really trying to figure out is what is actually working and what is down, and if it's down, is it down because it is encrypted, or is it down because it relies on another system that's encrypted, right? Like, we're still, in the first couple hours, we're still doing deep damage assessment. The stuff is far too complicated otherwise. And we're really trying to figure out, at like the 2-ish hour mark, what is salvageable, and then what is critical, and kind of creating a Venn diagram of those things, right? It's salvageable and it's critical, and then the third circle is level of effort to restore, right? How hard is it going to be for us to get it back up, so we can really get a nice prioritized list of that? Because if we're being honest, our DR plans aren't always totally up to date.
Right.
And maybe we weren't the smartest. We put it in Confluence and didn't print it out, and so our DR plans are also encrypted.
Right. Right.
So we're still in kind of the chaos, but the chaos is starting to slow. And now we're coming to the realization that this is real, this did happen, it is bad, and we're going to be in the news tonight.
What's interesting about this sort of simulation, which Commvault tries to deliver to its customers in so many different ways, is grasping the concept that many things are happening at once. You have a team that's trying to figure out what happened. You have a team that's trying to figure out how to get the bad guys out. You have a team trying to figure out how to get the business back up and running. Then you have a team trying to figure out, well, how do I deal with the clients at the door? How do I deal with the news? How do I deal with the regulators? And it's not just preparing your security team for an incident. It's preparing a cross-functional executive team.
It's a business interruption, right? So I have to prepare the entire business for what's going to happen, and almost no organization does that. So
let's talk a little bit about minimum viability. How can a company in this situation kind of short circuit this chaos with the concept of minimum viability?
Yeah, so minimum viability changes the game. What minimum viability says is I start the plan from what are the minimally viable components required to get my business back up and running, and then I protect those in a way that simply wasn't possible before, right? So minimum viability is I need to protect my identity management system. In most cases, Active Directory.
Use the hospital as an example. What would it mean if a hospital thought about a minimum viability program?
Yeah, so patient management.
Okay.
Records, kind of active records management, the systems that run each of the operating rooms and the systems that run the prescription dispense and tracking. Like, those things are absolutely, I don't care about billing at all. And that's what minimally viable really gives me. It gives me the ability to go, okay, cool, I have a brand new clean Active Directory, everything is perfectly replaced, and I have restored all the applications to the last known good state. Doesn't have to be perfect, right? It has to be back up and running and working, right? And for a hospital, that's a relatively short RTO and RPO because of that medication schedule. I can't give someone morphine and miss a window either direction, right? I can't make assumptions. So I actually need this to be relatively close and relatively centered. And if I'm smart and I work with the business, we've aligned.
Well, and what's the greater impact? The loss of the data or the loss of the ability to provide services?
Provide services by far, because people die.
So we all have to get accustomed, finally, that we are living in a world of constant cyber attacks. It needs to become something that is unjustifiable as a business if you do not have a minimum viability program.
I agree completely. I agree completely. And that change is enormous. And it's more than just, I have run books.
Right.
Right? It really is. You have to consider the holistic view of the application. What is the application? What are all the pieces that make it up? Not just from the application code, all of the data, all of the security, all of the context that's required to get that back up and running, right? How do I ensure that Active Directory doesn't have 46 backdoors in it? Because that's one of the things they do, right? They compromise a credential and they promote until they have domain admin, and then they create hidden accounts that you're not aware of, right? They take an account that hasn't been logged into in 180 days, they change the password and promote it to domain admin.
Right.
Right? Like they are reasonably smart, and so you really have to get ahead of it. And the only way to get ahead of it is to plan. And when you start talking about minimally viable company, we're not talking about the systems anymore. We're not talking about an imperative that has to involve the company. Your CEO has to be involved. Your CFO has to be involved. If you're a hospital, your chief medical officer has to be involved, because they have to help you define what are the things that are required to keep this business running, and then you can figure out how to protect them. And that is a totally different conversation. We're not talking about data protection. We're not talking about backup and recovery. We're talking about the core of the business being protected.
Yeah. Well, I think this is an incredibly important conversation. You are leading the way, and I can see, you and I debate how fast this will happen, not how fast this should happen, but I can definitely see how, I hope at least 24 months from now, it is something that everybody just knows. What is my minimum viability program? Not what is my DR plan.
Correct.
That somebody drafted, that who knows where it is.
It doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work.
What's the minimum viability program?
Yeah.
And CEOs should stand up in front of boards of directors and say, this is what happens. This is my plan if everything goes dark. Here's how I will stay in business. Right?
I agree. And it really should be CEOs that stand up and say it, not CIOs, not CISOs, right? Because they control such a narrow margin, and they still report up to layers of people,
right,
all that have conflicting needs and desires. But when the CEO stands up and says it, then it is a business imperative. It is business required, and it really needs to be the CEO that's on board.
So when a hospital goes dark, the buck stops with the CEO. So understanding how to get back up and running has to come from the CEO. It has to come from the person where the buck stops.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, we have a few minutes, and I know you're a whiskey aficionado.
I am.
And I would love to learn a little bit about how to taste whiskey.
Sure.
If you would indulge me.
What's really interesting here, you've actually chosen the proper glasses.
Oh.
So everyone's familiar with the Glencairn, which has kind of a tulip shape to it. They're fine, but they're really terrible tasting glasses. They're just really pretty. And the advantage to a glass like this is it's a nice wide glass.
Uh-huh.
So there
Bigger
are
pour?
well, there's three. Well, yes, for sure. But there's three parts to tasting. You have the nose, you have the palate, and you have the finish.
Okay.
So the nose is what you smell, the palate is what you taste, and then the finish is what you breathe after you've swallowed.
Okay.
Right? The nose also has three parts. So you can nose here, here, and here, and it will taste or smell completely differently. And you can't do that in a really small glass because it's so restricted. There's only one place to put your nose.
Fascinating.
So we can start, and this is Jefferson's. Jefferson is a nice bourbon, American whiskey. Bourbon must be American, must be made in the U.S.
Okay.
It must be aged in new charred oak barrels, and must contain 51% or more corn. Can be aged in any state, though.
Oh.
Can be distilled and aged in any state.
All right.
Jefferson got their start. They did a really neat experiment. They put whiskey in barrels and put them on ships. And then those ships traveled the world. And what they were trying to see is, does the sloshing, the temperature changes, and the salt water affect the taste of the whiskey?
And?
Really interesting experiment. Well, I'll leave it for you to decide. Everyone has an opinion.
How much whiskey do you have to try to make that determination?
Not as much as you would think.
Okay.
So we're going to start by nosing. And you want to see if you can get the whiskey to settle as much as you can. It's very hard to do when you're holding the glass. And then kind of bring it across your nose from front to back.
Wow.
Right?
That's interesting.
You get it's
very layered. Okay.
Right? Okay, so then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take very little into your mouth. Like what would fill the center of your tongue if you cupped your tongue?
Okay.
You're going to push it through your teeth with your mouth closed. I mean, you don't have to close your mouth, but if you don't, you'll spit it all over the floor.
Okay.
That's going to give you a sense of the viscosity.
Okay.
And a little bit of the woodiness. And then let it settle into the soft palate under your tongue. And that's going to give you a little bit more of the proof. And then swallow. So you should get like
smoother
toffee.
that way.
It's way smoother. You should get toffee and a little butterscotch,
Yeah,
hints of vanilla,
definitely.
right? It's amazing.
Good.
All of that is oak.
Oh my gosh. Salute. We'll have to do this again.
For sure.
Mm.
So I'm going to leave you with one final thing. When you're nosing, and I do it naturally so I forget, but when you're nosing, make sure your mouth is open. If your mouth is open, you don't take in so much of the ethanol, not that far.
You don't take in as much of the ethanol. Okay.
Right? If your mouth is closed, like
Right.
then
You,
try it with
you
your
smell
mouth
more
closed.
flavor.
Yeah, and then try it with your mouth closed.
It's
You
much
get a lot
stronger.
more alcohol, right?
Why?
I'm not sure. I think it has to do with the way the air flows through your
Wow.
nostrils that way. It's pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, this has been lovely, as always.
Thank
Hopefully
you so
we can
much.
do it again.
Yeah. Well, you're my regular guest. But it's because this topic is so important, and to be honest, there's so few people who have lived through an attack. And it turns out those are the most important people to talk to these days to help us figure out how we're going to get better and stronger. So thank you.
I agree. Anytime.
Appreciate it.